Hello everybody, welcome back. This is Interman 103 coming to you with a G40 Global Customizations video. So I've been working a bit, quite a while on this actually, and I want to say sorry I haven't been releasing videos recently. Been super busy. I got a job, I've been out of state a few times, so yeah, life's been crazy. And so here we are. Today I'm bringing you a whole lot in one video. So we're just going to dive right into it. So I've been working on, as you can see here, bunch of stuff. So I've got them listed by country here based on what countries do have new rules for them. So really I wanted to, more than just to make it more fun, I wanted to kind of balance it, to make it possible, like feasible for certain countries to do things that, you know, they plan to do, because I know it's basically impossible many times. Most of the time, it's almost impossible for Germany to take Moscow and win that way, because at that point, the UK, they can't focus enough on the UK, so the UK comes in and just wipes them out that way because they sent everything into Russia, right? Well, it's the same for Japan. If they focus too much on China, then the USA comes in and squishes them, right? Stuff like that. So I wanted to make it possible for the Axis in that sense, and for the Allies, yeah, I'll tell you what I did for the Allies in a little bit, but I kind of just showed you, but I didn't finish setting up Italy, which is bugging me. So yeah, let's just dive right into this. No, that needs to stay. Get this out of the way. Sorry about my messy room, but there it is. Okay, so let's start with Germany since they go first. So first I've introduced a new unit to Germany. So to make it less confusing, I did nothing to the setup of the game. The setup stays exactly the same as it is out of box, except for one little part, but that's easy to fix and not very confusing. I'll tell you guys about that later. But so first customization is Germany gets this new unit. It's a heavy tank. So this is, I believe, is the Tiger II model. So this is what comes with the 1941 version of the game. This sculpt, it is freaking awesome. And I spray painted it at one point. Red. Oh no, this is the Japanese one. Okay, so I spray painted the German ones red, I think, for a different game, and the Japanese. Anyway, this got painted and repainted, so I repainted it black, so it's not like it's shinier than the actual German pieces, if you can't see that. And this clarifies that German pieces are not dark gray. Everyone says they're dark gray. That is black, ladies and gentlemen. Blacker than black, okay? Now that that's settled. So I'll tell you what this does. It costs 9, and it's no, it costs 10, and it's 4-4. And that's pretty much it. It's a 4-4 ground troop for 10. So basically you could buy one of these for 10, or you could buy a fighter for 10. So it just depends on what you're focusing on as Germany. If you're going for Sea Lion and you wanted to go invade the United Kingdom, then you wouldn't want heavy tanks, you'd want to buy fighters instead, right? But if you're invading Russia, then heavy tanks would be super useful. The other thing a heavy tank does is if they're paired with mechs can blitz, right, because it's with a tank, but heavy tanks can boost one mech to 2. So these also act as artillery just to mechs, so they will not boost regular infantry. They'll only boost your mechanized infantry. So, super useful when you're invading Russia, alright? So the other thing, and this is a game changer, alright? The big change. Vichy France, okay? If you don't know what that is, it's a historical event. Vichy France was what France became once they lost Paris, but that is going to be represented in the game, okay? So once Paris, get that in front there, Paris falls to the Germans, for each territory you're going to roll a die for each unit on the board, except for these guys in London. Refocus there. Except for those guys in London, but and that ship, but for all these other ships, all these territories, even these ones with no troops, you're going to roll a die. Basically, if you get a 2 or less, they become Vichy, meaning the French start collecting income for them, and any troops there would become German. So right here, if I would roll, say, a 1 or 2, say I rolled a 1, okay, that territory would become German, and that infantry would become German, okay? That's how Vichy France works. Now, if I was to roll a 3 or greater, it becomes Free French. And so the French, also, I'm going to jump ahead here. The French get a huge bonus in this game because that's one thing that makes me really sad about this game is the French, they just die and then they're gone. And you can't really play as them as a single nation because, you know, they just die. And then you'll have troops that just eventually die off and you can't do anything as France. So I fixed that. So there's that game changer. This is also a game changer. This is kind of to balance. So for each thing I created, I had to create a counter to it, okay? So for this, I had a Russian counter. For this, I had a French counter, since that's basically what they target. So the target has to have a counter for it. So for the French, once Paris gets captured, France still has to give up all their money, but they keep their income. So they still collect income, and their capital moves to London, okay? So that makes London extra important because now France can also buy troops and place them using this factory, okay? They don't collect the money from London, all right? They still collect the money from what hasn't become Vichy, but that's where their factory is. So that's to represent the Free French de Gaulle's here, you know, leading the Free French there. So that's their hub. So that's the counteract. This going on right here. Once the Free French kick in, then they actually can do stuff in the game. They can build ships, planes, anything they want here. Ground troops, if they're planning amphibious assaults or just to defend London more. Whatever the heck they feel like, they can do it, all right? So Vichy gives Germany more money, but the Free French gives Germany a more incentive to jump on London and to maybe assist Italy in taking North Africa and the rest of Africa because they need to get rid of those French IPCs so they can stop producing troops there. Okay? All right, so let's move on. So that's pretty self-explanatory, simple so far. You just have to get used to some of the stuff, obviously. But moving on to Russia, so we have these partisan troops. So it's not really a troop. It's just an effect that they have focused there. So it's just a little fist, picture of a fist I found on the internet. Super simple. All right, so this is to counteract the heavy tank from the Germans. So since the Germans, and again, I'm doing all this to balance it, Germans can punch through Russia with force now, and even more brute force. The Russians have to have something to counteract that. So what partisans do is if the Germans, now I have to refocus here, are taking Bessarabia and they take Western Ukraine and they leave Bessarabia empty, one of these will pop up. It just pops up. It's completely free, costs nothing, but it also has no stats. So every territory that the Germans take but leave unoccupied, a partisan will pop up, okay? So say the Germans are over here taking a whole bunch of territories and they leave them unoccupied, these are going to pop up, okay? So on turn 1, that's unoccupied, it's German, but unoccupied, that'll pop up. On the second turn, if this isn't taken care of by the Germans, all they have to do is move a troop into it. It'll turn into an infantry, and Russia will take that back, okay? So Germany is going to be forced to leave at least an infantry, or their air force or something, in every single territory, okay? Or else infantry are going to start popping up, and they're going to be losing IPCs and getting flanked and all that kind of stuff. So that won't be fun for the Germans at all. So that's kind of to counteract the heavy tanks. That's what it is, okay? Another thing about Russia is now their capital does not surrender their cash and their economy, okay? So if you take Moscow, as any of the Axis powers, Russia keeps their money and they still can build troops. When they lose their last industrial complex is when they have to surrender their cash and cannot produce troops anymore, okay? So you can take Moscow and Leningrad and Ukraine, but as long as Russia still has Stalingrad here and has a factory, they still get all of their money, and they would be buying probably just tanks at that point to spend all the money. And they could still build and produce and get money, okay? But once you take their last factory, that's when they have to surrender their money, and that's when the income stops, okay? So that's, again, to balance some things out. And that's really historically accurate, because the Germans thought when Paris fell, France surrendered. They also thought when Moscow fell that Russia would surrender. However, that was not going to happen. Stalin was not going to say, well, we fought the good fight, but our big city's gone, so we'll surrender. No. If the Germans would have somehow taken Moscow in World War II, the Russians would have just pushed back until the Germans had taken all of Russia and every last Russian was dead, okay? Russia was not surrendering. Under any circumstances, Russia was not surrendering in this war, okay? So that's kind of balance and historical accuracy there. 2 in 1, so that's good. All right, so we'll move on here to the next player, Japan. All right, so Japan, no economic differences. Just they get 2 new troops, okay? So first we'll talk about this guy here. So they get cavalry. These are mounted cavalry. And so I looked up how many countries use cavalry in the war, and it was actually, a few of them did. About maybe 10 countries use cavalry. So that includes France used cavalry. Germany used cavalry all throughout the war, but mainly for carrying goods. Russia used cavalry all throughout the war. Again, they used a lot more for military though, and some for carrying goods. Who else? Romania used cavalry. Japan used cavalry. The United States actually used a little bit of cavalry, but they were the country who used the least cavalry in the war, and that was all to carry goods. They didn't use any as military, okay? So Japan gets the military cavalry. So these cost 4, so they cost the same as a mechanized infantry. They move 2, so they can blitz just like a tank. They attack at 2 and defend at 1. So these are just solid, quick attackers. That's their job in life. Move fast and strike hard, but once it comes to defending, they're screwed, okay? They're dead. They're going to be your first casualties on defending, but they're good attackers, all right? So that's super simple, self-explanatory. This, however, is a little bit more complicated, okay? So this is a troop the Japanese can build only one time, costs 25 IPCs, and it is the Yamato, okay? So this is the largest battleship ever built, okay? It was freaking massive. This is not the actual sculpt of it. I think this is the actual sculpt of it. All their battleships are the actual sculpt of the Yamato. Yeah, yep. This is just the World War I battleship sculpt for Italy, and it's orange. It's the same orange as Japanese pieces. So I'm using it because it's different from the others, okay? I don't have Pacific, or I'd use the red one, but I don't. So this is the Yamato. It costs 25 IPCs. The reason it is so cheap is because you can only buy it once, but it is an amazing ship, okay? So it's still a 4-4, just like a normal battleship. It attacks at 4, defends at 4, but it has 3 hit points, which means you can damage it 2 times or 3 times before it sinks. So it can have 2 damage on it and still be functional, okay? So let's say it's in a battle against some US ships, okay? It takes a damage, boom. Good. It's good, okay? And then it goes into another battle, takes another damage. Boom. It is still good. The 3rd damage will be what sinks the ship, okay? So that's what makes it really, really good. But the other thing that makes it super good is that it has a built-in anti-air gun. So when planes attack it, it gets the die roll of a normal anti-air gun. So 1 against 1 plane, 2 against 2, 3 against any 3 or more, right? So it has a chance right off of the bat to just end the small Air Force, okay, when it's defending. So super good unit, but it's so cheap because they can only build one of them. So they can only have one of these. Once it's dead, unfortunately, it's gone off the map. So the Japanese are going to be very cautious to protect the crap out of this once it's on the board because it's such a good unit, okay? So they're going to take that 2 damage and then probably just get the heck back to port and repair it up and then bring it back into action, which is what happened many times. It got damaged like, 4 times, I think, repaired and then put back into battle. And it took 11 bombs, somewhere 11 to 15 bombs in 4 hours to sink it. So it was a good ship. All right. So there's Japan. They just get 2 new units, one of which they can build once, but it's really amazing. All right. So we're going to move on to China here. Or no, the USA, I'm sorry. So this is, the USA doesn't get any economic abilities. They just get military abilities. So what they can do is lend-lease. They can lend-lease troops to 2 countries, and that's China and Britain. Okay? So now you might think, what the heck? They can just lend-lease all their troops to China or Britain? That's kind of stupid. No. Okay, that would be retarded, all right? If they're buying, they make $42. If they're buying 2 British battleships every turn, that's kind of stupid, all right? I agree. So there's limitations on this. So they can buy 2 Chinese infantry on their turn. Okay? So they're not American infantry. They will actually be represented as 2 Chinese infantry, and they'll place them in China, okay, on their turn, once their turn's done. So that represents lend-leasing to China. Now, the destroyers is because America was sending a bunch of destroyers to the UK to deal with all the U-boats. So they can buy 1 destroyer and send it to the UK, specifically C-Zone 109. So right here where this destroyer is, the United States can add another British destroyer there on their turn, every turn, okay? So the units that they lend-lease will be placed at the end of their turn, just like all their other troops will be placed. But again, the sculpts will be replaced by the sculpt of the country they're sending it to. So either Chinese infantry or British destroyer. So that makes America pretty good as an ally, right? Because they can't participate in the war right away. So they can still be helping out, which is good. All right, then we move on to China. We're just moving right along here. China can build artillery and they can build tanks. I said it, folks. China can build artillery and they can build tanks if the Burma Road is intact. So if India, Burma, Yunnan, and Sichuan are all still under Allied control, then China can just pump these bad boys out. They still cost the same and have the same stats as a normal artillery or tank, okay? So this is still a 2, attack at 2, defend at 2, cost 4. Same as anyone else, and this is still a 3-3 that costs 6, okay? But they can pump them out as long as the Burma Road is still intact. All right, so the only downside, they can have as many artillery as they want, but the only downside is they can only have 2 tanks at all. So once they build one and it dies, it's dead for good, just like the Yamato, and they can build up to 2, okay? So you can see down here, there's only 1 other tank sculpt in their bin. They don't have any more. So that's just to show that once these 2 tanks die, one of them at a time, maybe you place one, then it dies and you place the other. Once they're both dead, though, they're dead, and you can't rebuild them. All right, so that's kind of like the Yamato in that sense, but they're there to have, and it just helps China a little bit. And this is going to help China a little bit too. All right, so that's kind of where the balance comes in with this against this. Again, trying to balance everything out, okay? So I told you about this, France moving their capital. So let's move on here to Italy. Italy has the worst ability. All right, they get the short end of the stick here. But, you know, as usual, Italy will be controlled by whoever plays Germany, okay? No one is going to play Germany and Japan and let the second axis player play Italy. That's just absurd. It's usually Germany and Italy, and then the other person plays Japan, okay? That's just how it normally goes. So, bound to happen in most games, Rome will fall to the Allies, all right? If the U.S. plays one of 2 scenarios, that's normally how the U.S. plays. One of 2 scenarios, okay? First scenario being they go into the north and, come in either through Scandinavia, take Norway, or come in through the UK and go for D-Day, Operation Overlord, hit Belgium or Normandy, right? So that's the first scenario. Second, more popular, I see it every time. USA comes into Morocco and takes North Africa, right? They're just liberating everything. Well, taking it because Paris is... No, liberating, Free French. They'll have a capital. Liberating all this, then they'll take this back, and eventually they'll take Rome, okay? That's what I see in almost every game I've played in Europe and global. United States starts at Morocco, moves through North Africa. Once they get to about Tunisia, at that point, Rome will fall, okay? So, once Rome falls, all Italian territories become German, and all Italian troops become German. So Italy leaves the game completely. They are no longer a country. They no longer have income. They just don't exist. All that they own becomes German. So they just add to the German economy and military and Navy and Air Force if they still have those too, okay? So, in that sense, Italy gets the short end of the stick. Germany, however, will get a huge bonus because if Rome falls, northern Italy will still probably be in Italian control, so Germany will get that 4 IPCs. Albania will probably still be there, so they'll get 1 IPC from that. Maybe they still control Libya too, so that's 6 IPCs that the Germans just got, just because. Also, the cash that would go to the ally who captured Rome goes to Germany, which is amazing, right? So if Italy had, for some reason, like 19 IPCs saved up, and you capture Rome, you don't get it. Germany gets that 19 IPCs. So this is to represent like when Mussolini's hanged, upside down from a meat hook from a building, like the professionals do. When Mussolini's hanged, Italy just revolts and they hate the Nazis, but the Germans come in and they take Italy, basically. They just come in and say, no, we got this, you guys. You kind of sucked. You can't beat America on your own. We're going to come in here and do it for you. So that's kind of to represent the German occupation of Italy once Rome falls. Germans come in and they take control of everything. All right? So that's actually super good for the Germans, but for the Italians, they just don't get a say. They're just gone. And so that's why it makes more sense, even more sense, for the German player to already control Italy. Because if they control Germany and Japan, and Italy doesn't exist anymore, then that player can't do anything. And that's kind of, well, you're done, son, right? So that's why it makes more sense for Japan to be the second Axis player, all right? So that's it for those special abilities for countries. That's those rules. And now we'll move on over here. I've got 2 more things for you. One of which you may have noticed in the beginning. I kind of gave it away by pointing, but we have a new nation. Instead of UK being split economies, we have the Commonwealth, okay? So the Commonwealth has has control of all of the Pacific British territories. So I didn't put roundels on them because, it used up all the Anzac roundels except for 2. And you're going to need more than that probably, especially when you're taking the money islands, right? So India becomes part of the Commonwealth, Burma, Shan State, Malaya, Borneo. I'm knocking stuff over. Kwangtung becomes part of the Commonwealth. Canada, so Western Canada over there, and all of Canada right here become part of the Commonwealth. So I dropped something. What did I drop? I dropped my infantry in South Africa. There he is. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So Canada, I didn't mark them because they're already marked differently, so it's pretty easy to tell. You just put the right parts. So all of the units are represented by Anzac troops. Everything here. Also, West India is Commonwealth, just to make all of India Commonwealth, make it less confusing. Again, I don't want the split economies and stuff getting weird, all right? So Commonwealth still does have 2 infantry in Egypt, but the infantry that would have been, the 3 infantry that would have been British in Malaya, all become Commonwealth, all right? So that's that. That's pretty simple, but the Commonwealth, their income is 34, so they're speaking softly and carrying a big stick in a sense. They can pump out a lot, but You kind of see it as less when you figure they have to now purchase things for India and Australia. Then that number kind of goes down, and even they might pump out some stuff in Canada, so it's even less because they're splitting it up more instead of just buying a huge army in India or a huge army in Australia. All right. So it's not really a ton when you really think about it, especially since Germany's going to greatly surpass that in very few turns, right? So another thing, we added a unit that everyone can buy. This is to represent a bunker. So this is just a dowel that's been cut up into many pieces, right? Come on, focus there. Okay, it's not going to really focus. So this is just a little wooden dowel. So bunkers cost 6. They have 2 hit points and defend at 2. So they're like an infantry, cost twice as much as an infantry, and have twice as many hit points as an infantry. Downside is they can't move. They're kind of a solid structure built into the ground, so they cannot move, alright? But the interesting thing about them is if they're damaged and you happen to win the battle and they survive, you can heal them for 1 IPC. So the damage is just like a complex is damaged where you can heal it for 1 IPC. Alright? So if they take 2 damage though, they're dead, but if they take 1 and they live, you can heal it on your turn for 1 IPC. So they're pretty good. So that's it. That's all so far, you guys. Hope you like it, and I'm going to play test it. Actually, right after the end of this video, I'm going to start a game by myself, unfortunately. I'm going to use all of these house rules to see if everything balances out correctly. I'm going to be using some very fun methods got some new pieces. I got some new pieces to represent things. If you couldn't tell, I got these damaged little platforms to put your big ships on that got damaged. And I'm going to be using these for convoys to show, because oftentimes you forget convoys are there because you can't see them. So I'm going to pay attention and put that underneath a convoying ship. So on the person's turn, you will know you are being convoyed. Big yellow stands out, right? Okay. Another thing, though, I never play with national objectives because that really screws up the balance of the game. Because with national objectives, it leans heavily in regard to the Axis, specifically Germany. Germany just gets a ton of money from national objectives, and Italy has the potential to get a lot too. It's pretty easy for them because they'll be focusing more on North Africa. They'll get Greece. They'll get southern France. So, yeah, the national objectives just tend to be biased towards the Axis, so I don't play with those. And it makes the game, I don't know, simpler and more interesting, right, at the same time. It doesn't take away like, oh, you're not playing with national objectives? Well, this game's going to be boring, right? No, you take them out and you can't really tell the difference, right? That's when the game is being played at its simplest, most bare form. It's still super fun because this is an incredibly fun game, all right? So those are my house rules for now. I'm going to be coming out with new victory conditions because, again, these are things that I think the way the game is played leans to the Allies. National objectives make it lean to the Axis. Victory conditions lean towards Allies, right? I think that there's a lot of bias when it comes to rules. I don't think the designers intended it to be that way, but every single game, you see patterns. You see patterns between games. So I'm going to try to break those patterns to where the game can be as fair to everyone as possible. I've started doing that by making each country, have their own little thing that they can do. Some being good, some being not so good, so it kind of balances. Some being okay, I guess, It depends on the scenario. Everything depends on the scenario. But I'm going to be coming out with, I'm working on right now, new research and development because, everyone hates that. It's crappy, and I've never, ever, ever, in playing a game with another human, seen anyone buy research and development, including myself. I've never bought it. Okay, I've never seen anyone buy it, and I don't expect to ever see anyone buy it because it's not worth it. Okay, so I'm making it a little bit more worth it, adding a few new things to that, and I'm going to add new victory conditions. So this is inspired, thank you, Young Grasshopper, inspired by him. So they're going to be victory tokens that you get, or victory points. and they're achieved by certain accomplishments, certain things you accomplish, right? So one of them for the Axis will be when Moscow is captured, that's a victory token, all right? It's probably going to be Germany, but any Axis power can take Moscow. So when the Axis control Moscow, the Axis will get a victory token. And for the Axis as well, if all of China, every Chinese territory is Axis controlled, the Axis will get a victory token, all right? And that's probably going to be Japan, but again, anyone can accomplish that. So things like that. And there's going to be allied ones, of course. I just don't know what they are yet. I'm going to be coming up with them soon, but I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please don't playtest this yet unless you really, really want to. I'm going to play test it for you guys, and I'll come to you at the end of my game, probably in a few days. At the end of my game, when everything's said and done, when I've decided there is a winner, I'll shoot a video and show you. And that'll be good too, because then you guys will see how I play. But I'll show you if everything balanced out, you know, if I even bought some of the troops, like, did Germany even bother to buy heavy tanks, right? At the end of my game, you see no heavy tanks on the board, and you're like, well, that wasn't worth it, you know? And I might say the same thing and say, why add that if I'm not going to buy any? Or the Japanese might not have any of these, the cavalry on the board. They might have the Yamato, but no cavalry, so why bother with the cavalry if the Japanese haven't bought any? I personally think I would buy a bunch of cavalry as Japan. Like, if I had a major complex here, I'd be buying, like, as many cavalry as I can afford and buy other ships and stuff to be blitzing through China as quickly as possible, because they're the same as artillery. They just defend at one less and move one more. So why buy artillery at that point, move slowly through China and let, you know, the Commonwealth build up when I can buy cavalry and blitz through? So I'll be playtesting that and balancing it for you guys. I love you all. Thank you for sticking around. Even though I've been, you know, doing some weird things lately with my channel, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to start playtesting this in just a moment. I love you all. See you soon.